As you're looking to take an intake manifold off of a 2005 through 2009 Mustang GT, this also goes along with the Ford Explorer, Mercury Mountaineer, 2006 to 2010. Why are you taking an intake manifold off? Do you have a vacuum leak, or are you changing out the head gasket or timing components? Anytime you take off these parts, you have to take off the intake manifold. So today we're going to go over that. So the first thing you want to do is we want to disconnect the negative battery. We want to remove the intake tubing. This is obviously a cold air intake. If you had the stock intake on here, there would be a tube here going to the box. So you would just want to remove that stock intake tube here. There'd be a band coupler here at the box and one at the throttle bodies. You would loosen both of those there. And then you would want to remove the mass airflow sensor connector, and then just remove the tube out of the way. Next thing you want to do is remove the engine intake cover. It's a 8mm bolt socket. When removing this, there's two little tabs back here. You just want to carefully push up and then pull the whole thing forward. That removes it. Now you want to remove some of the PVC. Obviously this one doesn't have it on there, but there would be one here going to here. You would just pull those off. There'd be another one here. You want to press down on that tab and pull it off. Next, you want to take off all the electrical connectors. Here we have two at the throttle body, one here for the motor, and we have one here for the TPS. We have another one here on the fuel rail. Just press down on that tab and just pull right off. Okay, so next we want to get all the fuel injectors here. Just pull those off. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to loosen the fuel rail bolts. There's 4 of them. So we got to take this harness off the top here. And the idea is we're going to release this fuel rail here on the passenger side, and we're just going to fold it over. That's going to be an 8mm bolt for all 4. So now you want to gently pry up on the fuel rails. Now I'm going to do the other side. Now that that's loose, just kind of fold it over like this, get it out of the way. And now we're gonna loosen all of the intake manifold bolts. I have an impact on with an extension, and all the bolts are 10mm. So you just want to go around and start loosening all of them up. Remember, there's one right in the middle, right back here. There's one and hiding behind here as well in the middle. Don't forget the ones in the back. Should be a total of 10 intake manifold bolts. So once you get those off, you should be able to just lift up on it, see if it moves. In the back, there's going to be a vacuum line going from the brake booster. Yeah. And then there's another connector right here that I missed. I use a needle nose pliers to get this clamp off. And that should be that. At this point, we want to get our shop vac and vacuum up all the debris here that's all loose and in the valley. We don't want anything falling into the intake. I'm going to get our shop towels, or if you're going to use masking tape, just protect those runners from getting anything in there. Next thing you want to do is you want to prep the deck surface here, and you want to get off as much debris as you can. Use some WD-40, you can use a mild detergent, some soapy water, and you always want to use a plastic gasket scraper or some kind of plastic scraper. You never want to use anything metal like a flathead screwdriver or anything like that, because you could damage the mating surface. So you just want to get around and scrape off all this debris and dirt that's on here and get this surface nice and clean. I got the manifold upside down. We want to take out all of these O-rings here. You want to get yourself a little pick or whatnot and just get in here and pull off all the O-rings. Anytime you're taking the intake manifold off, you probably want to replace these. If they have lower miles, they should still be good. They should be nice and soft. These are stiff and brittle, so these definitely need to be replaced. So you want to take all 8 of them off and get them replaced. Alright, now that we have our new O-rings put on the bottom here, next thing we want to do is we want to set the intake down. So we just want to get a little close here, and we want to reconnect our throttle, intake throttle connection back here. Then we want to connect our booster line hose. Get some needle nose here, squeeze that clamp. Just put it back on there. Okay, now once that's back on, you can slowly set the manifold back into place. Now that we got our manifold back on, we want to take our 10 intake manifold bolts and just thread them in so that they're in there. Alright, so now that we have them all seated, now we want to torque them. You want to use your inch-pound torque wrench, and we want to set it to 89 inch-pounds. And when we torque these down, we want to go in a crisscross pattern, and like I said, I'll have that diagram posted on the video as well. Alright, now we want to torque them down. We're going in a crisscross pattern. I'm going to get these middle inside bolts first. Alright, now that we got the intake manifold torqued back down, now we're going to put our fuel rails and injectors back on. Just wrap them back here. And back in there. Okay. We'll take our fuel rail bolts. Just start them. Alright, so next we're going to put our connectors back on. We got our fuel rail connector. We got our throttle body connector right here. CPS. Remember, these little red tabs all have to go in. That one doesn't have one. We want to put our fuel injector connectors back on. Now when I put your PVC hose back on, it's got to use your imagination. Clips on right here, goes here, and the other one's going to be here, going to right there. Just snaps right back on. Okay, then we're going to do our engine cover. I'm putting this back on. Make sure that slides through. Sides, and those get pressed on these little studs from the fuel rail. And then you got your little 8mm nuts that go right on the studs. And these are just keeping the engine cover in place. You don't want to over tighten these. Finger tight. Then lastly, we're just putting our intake back on. I would have a band clamp here and I would tighten that down. I would tighten it down here. If you have the stock tube, get your MAF sensor connector back on, and that's it. And lastly, we want to reconnect our negative post. Alright guys, if you have any questions about taking the intake manifold off and reinstalling it, the Mustang GT 4.63 valve, ask a question in the comments, and like and subscribe.